Our mission statement is to help everyone. Our goal is to help everyone take their next step closer to Jesus. And, there's always room. There's always more to go, right? Anybody right next to Jesus right now? You made it? Anybody fully done? You've grown as much as you need to? No? Okay. Not even a snarky raise of the hand. Okay, that's fine. There's always room to grow. Man, it's just wild when you think about it. And I know some people come to church, and most people come to church, even if it's just by habit, knowing they need something, knowing they need to move forward. But sometimes it's hard. You just get settled in and get stuck, and you're not ready to do what you need to do to make some sort of change. And so that's our goal, is to prompt you to make that next step, whatever that next step is, whatever it is. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, if you have a Bible, that's awesome. If you don't have a Bible and you have a phone, you can use that. And if you don't have a phone or a Bible, we've got Bibles in the little rack beneath your seats, at least some of them. We had a generous donor who wanted people to be able to have access to Bibles. So if you're just needing something to make it look like you're paying attention, you can grab that out of the rack below you in the seat in front of you. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Ephesians 3:20. Chris mentioned this as he talked about communion. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. To him be the glory throughout the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Oof. Forever and ever. I know, nobody likes it, because when the speaker says, oh, you did terrible the first time. I know nobody likes that, but come on. When you read a verse like that, we talked about this last week. That's the Braveheart. That's the Independence Day, President Whitmore speech of verses. You get excited about what God might be doing and what Paul is proclaiming that God is doing in this passage. It's energizing. What would we call, here's a little quiz for you. What would we call that statement right there that Paul is making? How would we describe the language he's using in that verse? What would we say? What's a word or two? Anthem, it's a very obscure one, but I can always trust Travis for obscurity. Yeah, anthem could be one of it. Yeah. Anything else? We might call that worship. Worship. Who gets the gold star this morning? Oh, interesting. I think the guy running the slides, my nephew, who I think is cheating. Fair enough. But that's true. Thank you, Malachi. Even if you are cheating, you got the right answer. It is worship. It's what Paul is doing, is he's just making a declaration of truth. And in the middle of that declaration about how God can do more than we can possibly ask or imagine, he just hey, God's got to receive some glory right now. And so he's writing. Remember, he's probably dictating this. Somebody else is probably writing it down. And he's getting excited. He's probably lost the thread of thought a little bit as he's getting into worship. It's worship. Years ago, we were driving. I'd helped out at a friend's camp that he runs down in southern Louisiana, and we were in Iowa. So we had driven down to southern Louisiana, and that's a long drive. We had been there for a week, and we were driving back, and I had my family, and I had a few other people that wanted to participate in this camp in this vehicle. And as we were driving back and we were going through Louisiana, the check engine light came on. Well, my typical policy with a check engine light is, if the car's running, you just keep rolling. Check engine light, who knows, right? We got into Arkansas, and the car started running a little bit rough. The SUV started running a little bit rough, and I'm just I don't know. But we're still running, and we want to get home. It's been a long week. This is tough. We got into Missouri, and the car stopped running, and smoke started pouring out of the dashboard. And I thought, I don't think that's how this is supposed to work. I don't think there's a button that says put smoke coming out of the dashboard. So I pulled over on the side of the road. It's in the evening. Everybody's tired. Everybody wants to be home. Nobody wants to be stuck on the side of the road. And so we pull over, and I hop out, and I pop the hood, and I look at the hood as if I have any clue what I'm looking at. Like Seinfeld says, unless there's a big on-off switch that's off, I'm done. I don't have any other solutions here. And so I'm looking at this thing. I have no idea what to do. I don't know, we got this group full of people. How are we going to manage through this? And a car pulls over, sees me in distress, pulls over, and a guy hops out and comes up to me, and he's like, hey, are you, everything okay? And I'm like, no, I just love sitting on the side of the road on the highway with my hood up. I didn't say that. He's just being very friendly. Are you good? And I'm like, yeah, something's wrong. I don't know what. And he goes, I don't know anything about engines either. Okay, great. So you pulled over out of guilt. And I'm not kidding when I tell you this. he says, I do have something. I don't know if it'll help or not, but you're welcome to have it. And he pulls out of his pocket a butter knife. And he says, will this help? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It's as good as anything I got. He hopped back in his car and took off. So I'm on the side of the road with a car that doesn't work and a butter knife. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I put the hood back down. I get in the car. Car starts up. We run fine all the rest of the way home. All the rest of the way home. We're fine. And I have a butter knife now that I can tell a story about. What I am about to tell you that I believe is an absolute truth is going to feel as if I've just handed you a butter knife to fix your engine. All right? What I'm about to tell you, I believe, is the truth, but it's going to feel counterintuitive. It is going to feel it's going to feel flat when you're dealing with something that's hard and difficult. And here it is. The most effective response to confusion and crisis in your life, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your communities, in your state, in your nation, in your world, the most effective response to confusion and crisis is worship. And some of you are like, thanks for the butter knife, Patrick. That's great. I need practical solutions because I'm going through something real, and stopping and singing some worship song isn't going to solve my problems right now. I want to explain why I am saying what I'm saying. I know it feels inadequate for the situation, especially if you rolled in this morning feeling very weighed down by things going on in your life or in our country. And I say, just worship. Just worship. It sounds like I'm saying, turn that frown upside down. Don't worry, be happy. You're like, that's inadequate for the situation. We're in a series that we're calling Immeasurably More, and we're basing it off that Ephesians 3 chapter, and just trying to figure out what is true about our church and what do we want to be true about our church. So it's really about our core values, both who we are and who we are becoming. And so there's 5 aspects to who we are and who we are becoming. Last week, we talked about the first one, which was intentional belonging, which means that you have to make an effort to belong somewhere as much as the group you're trying to belong to has to make an effort to allow you to belong. It's an uphill battle both ways. Isolation and loneliness are the norm. Belonging is something that we all need, but it is hard work. We talked about that last week. It's worth it, but it's hard. This week, we are talking about essential worship. A core value that we want to be true and we want to be more true about who we are. Here's my presumption or my thesis. Every time you see a follower of God in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, every time you see a follower of God handle some difficulty in life, they begin with worship. They begin with worship. Let me give you just a couple examples. Job chapter 1, verse 20. Job loses everything. Talk about confusion and crisis. At this, Job got up, tore his robe, shaved his head, and then fell to the ground in worship and said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. This was his first reaction to incredible difficulty, as outlined in the story in Job chapter 1. Habakkuk, everybody's favorite book of the Bible. I know you've probably read it this morning. Habakkuk chapter 3, though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines. We've all been there, right? And the olive crop fails. Oh no, the fields produce no food. Though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. Acts chapter 16, we preached through this text a few weeks ago. Paul's arrested, he's stripped, he's beaten, severely flogged, the text says. He's not calling his lawyers. He's not calling the newspaper saying, hey, this incredible crime of injustice has happened and been perpetrated on me. He's not writing the governor. What is he doing? Verse 25, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and they were singing hymns to God. And the other prisoners were listening to them. Well, what else are they going to do? But they're listening. You see this pattern all over the Bible. I didn't write these down, but you feel free to look them up if you want later. But it's Psalm 3, Psalm 4, Psalm 5, Psalm 7, Psalm 9, Psalm 13, Psalm 22, Psalm 31, Psalm 34, Psalm 42, Psalm 43, Psalm 71, where David or whoever is in particular is composing that psalm is like, life is terrible right now, but I will praise you. Why did they do that? What did they know that we don't know? Why did they react to hardship and confusion and difficulty and conflict with praise? And when we hear, oh, you need to praise in the middle of the difficulty that you're experiencing, we feel like, oh, thanks for the butter knife, even though my engine doesn't work. What did they know that we don't know? What did they understand that we understand? In fact, even in Ephesians chapter 3, that passage that we started off with that we're basing this series on, the book of Ephesians, the letter to Ephesians is, does anybody know, anybody know where Paul was when he wrote it? I think you guys are mumbling the answer, I'm assuming. Just for a hint, it's part of the prison epistles, if that gives, he was not in wonderful circumstances. He was not on a beach in Bali sipping a lemonade writing, hey, everybody, life's awesome. God's amazing. God can do more than you can ask or imagine, even though we are in these tremendously difficult situations. Why aren't they panicking? See, we want to do something. We want to react. We want to have a solution and an answer. We want to grasp for control. And here I am arguing that the most effective response in confusion and crisis is to worship. Okay, Patrick, I'll listen. Why is that the case? Why is that the case? Now, let me offer this disclaimer. We've talked about this before, but let me take 30 seconds to do this. Worship, despite the way that we use the word, the limited way in which we use the word, worship is not simply just singing. It's not just singing on Sunday morning. We call this the worship room. We call this a worship service. We call these worship songs. But worship is a whole life endeavor. It's doing what we do, what God has given us to do in a way that brings glory to Him. It's everything. It's not just songs. We eat and we drink and we work and we play and sing all to the glory of God. Why? Why is this true? Why is worship the correct response in the midst of difficulty? I'm going to give you three reasons. Number one, worship reorients us toward the real center of the universe. Okay? I saw a video that I want to share with you. I want to set it up. It's a wedding ceremony. This is a new thing. I've done lots of weddings, but a new thing in the last probably 4 or 5 years is that weddings have more than one photographer and a videographer. These are well-documented events. And probably about 5 or 6 years ago was the first time one of the photographers or videographers said, hey, when you pronounce the bride and groom, husband and wife, you need to skedaddle because we're taking pictures of the big kiss and you don't want some sort of weird minister in the background kind of leering at them as they're kissing. And I've seen several pictures of myself in the background of people. And I'm like, it does look creepy. Like here I am just smiling at these two people smooching right in front of me. So the preacher has to do his thing, and then he steps off to the side real quick so that they can get a nice picture. I saw this video this week because these things get more and more and more elaborate. There's fireworks, and everything is set up just perfectly. And I want to show you a video at the end of a ceremony where everything has been set up perfectly, and then, of course, something happens. Show this video, if you would. Beautiful setting. Benson Boone playing in the background, flowers. They're going to pause midway. I would love to know the backstory to this video. Is that mom? Is that mother-in-law? Is that auntie whoever that just like, hey, wrap this up, it's time to go. They're serving refreshments. I've watched that video 4 or 5 times as I was thinking about getting it ready for this. Can we show it one more time? Are you able to play it again? Yeah, play it again. I know this is going to hurt some of your heart. I think this is so much fun. They've been planning this moment. They've been preparing for just this time. They've got it timed, the music and the fireworks, and then the lady in the pink dress. Isn't it funny the second time too? I don't know. We could probably watch it 5 more times and it would just be as funny. This is right to jail, right? Right to jail. Get out of here. She is not where she is supposed to be. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1. Isaiah writes, I saw the Lord. I saw him. He was high and exalted. He was seated on a throne, and the train of the robe that he was wearing, it filled the temple. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet. And with 2 they were flying, and they were calling to one another, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is filled with his glory." At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and the threshold shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. And Isaiah realized, I am not supposed to be here. This is not for me. I am a mother-in-law in a pink dress ruining the moment in a video. I should not be here. And he literally says, "Woe is me. I am a man of unclean lips." He recognizes that he's not supposed to be here, that this is not for him, that he is not qualified. And side note, can I say this? Because I think this is worth noting. When God gets to control the worship playlist that he listens to, notice the type of music that he chooses. He chooses music that shakes the room. He chooses music that's repetitious. When we say, "Oh, I didn't like the songs," who cares? Did God like it? Who cares what you think? It's not for you. When you're like, "I didn't like the songs today," you're the lady in the pink dress. This moment is not for you. Is it true? Are you saying truth to the people around you in order to encourage them? Are you glorifying God? Then it's fine. God, forgive us when we think we get to decide what is true worship. Worship reorients us around reality. And we all don't get that vivid Isaiah 6 experience. We don't get that. Sometimes we get close to that. But it reminds us that God is at the center of everything, that he's the center of everything. And even when you sing some of these songs, worship, it's not like we're learning anything necessarily in worship. But those songs are so moving. For example, the song "Goodness of God." It's hard to sing sometimes because you're just overwhelmed with the truth that you're singing about. That his goodness is chasing after me, that all my life you have been faithful. It's moving because you're reminding yourself of what is true that's easy to forget in the midst of difficulty and hardship. It reorients us around something that is true. Because when we act, when things are hard and we act from a place of fear or panic, we don't make good decisions. Liam, my 13-year-old, and the neighbor boys and I were in our backyard, and we had decided to burn some brush and some wood that I had in the backyard. And if you're wondering if I got a permit for the sake of this story, let's say I did. And we're in the backyard, and the wood was a little damp, and so if you're wondering, did I use a little gasoline to make it burn better? For the sake of the story, let's say I didn't. But let's just say that the fire it wasn't bad, but it got a little out of hand. Just a little, okay? I'm here, we're all here, we all have our eyebrows. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it got a little out of hand. I don't know who knows the fire chief in town, but when it started to get a little out of hand, one of the neighbor boys lost his mind. Because it's a fire. His limbs stopped working. He stopped being able to put together a sentence. I said, "Hey, will you maybe go get that towel and we'll put the towel over it?" It wasn't a big deal. And he's like, "Is this it?" And he picks up a spatula. Man, he lost his brain because he was operating from a place of fear and panic. And when we're responding to difficulty from a place of fear and panic, we don't make good choices. But if we are able to stop and reorient ourselves around who truly is the center of the universe, then maybe we can make better decisions with that in mind. Worship reorients us. Who really is in control? Whose will really needs to be accomplished? Who is good? Who am I actually pursuing? And then we can act. Worship reorients us towards the real things. Number 2, worship reminds us that the hard things aren't the only true things. I know we all probably use GPS to drive around, right? Have you ever had the experience where you are going to meet somebody and you're saying, "Oh yeah, GPS says I'm going to be there in about 37 minutes. But what the good people at Google didn't realize is that every road between you and where you're going is shut down for construction traffic. And so you're like, "I know we were going to get lunch, but I think we're going to have to meet for dinner because it rerouted me through Duluth. So I'm 2 hours away from you now at this point." But have you ever had the opposite experience where construction was over? I know it's a rare experience. Where construction was done, but the maps hadn't updated you, and so you're like, it's going to take me all over creation, but there actually was a straight shot, and had you just gone the route you knew you should go, it would have been fine. I think I've had that experience, and it's never fun when you're operating with information that isn't accurate. It is true that the world can be a sad, hard place. I don't want to deny that. I've been accused, and I think it's actually correct, that my personality, the way God has wired me, is to just find that little nugget, that little sliver of happiness and hope in the midst of just awfulness. And so some people are like, Patrick, sometimes you got to acknowledge the awfulness. True, absolutely right. But I'm wired to see that little sliver of hope. But it is true that the world can be a sad, hard place. I know you have all experienced that. Nobody's a stranger to difficulty. Psalm chapter 42, verse 3 and 4. It's such an interesting passage. It's not one of David's, but he writes this: my tears have been my food day and night. No stranger to difficulty. My tears have been my food day and night. Not much nutritional value in tears. People say to me all day long, where is your God? These things I remember as I pour out my soul. Is this a good day or a bad day? It's having a bad day. He goes, I remember, man, things used to be so good. I used to go into the house of God, under the protection of the Mighty One, with shouts of joy and praise among the festive throng. Those were the good old days, and they're gone. And then, in this psalm, he begins to speak to himself. And he says this in the next verse, verse 5. He says, why, my soul, why are you downcast? Let's talk about this. Let's get to the bottom of this. Why are you so disturbed within me? And you're like, well, you know why? Because all of the terrible things that happened. All the terrible things I just listed. Things used to be good, but they're no good anymore. And then this is what he tells himself. He tells himself, listen, you're not taking in all the data. You need to put your hope in God, for I will yet praise him. He is my Savior and my God. You're driving with a GPS that doesn't have the updated information. If all you can see is the bad things, you're not taking in all the information. Worship doesn't disavow difficulty, but worship acknowledges that difficulty is not the full picture. In fact, in preparing for this sermon, I think it's fair to say, I'll be vulnerable, that I have gone through maybe a difficult, discouraging stretch. I know, shocking, right? Doesn't seem like I would ever have moments of discouragement, but believe it or not, I do. Ask my wife. So I'm going through this, it's just things are harder, difficult, and confusing, and I don't know exactly what's going on. And then I'm convicted, like blindside tackled by the reality that I am not, that in that discouragement, I'm not telling myself the whole story. Because the whole story is, for example, just give you a few little tidbits of things that weren't bad. The whole story is that this week, God answered a prayer as I was sitting down to pray it. Before I could articulate the words, God had answered it. That's pretty cool. That's the bigger picture. Or I had literally, I had been talking to my wife and I had lamented, to use a biblical term. If I had been David, I would have been like, my tears are my only food. It wasn't quite that bad, but I was being a little dramatic. And I was just like, why is this happening? Why is this going the way it is? And just so frustrated. God answered that frustration in such a spectacular way that my wife literally texted me, you owe God an apology. And she was right. I had overreacted because I wasn't taking in all the information. There's so many stories. There's examples that you have too, but even just this week, Chelsea mentioned that Wednesday nights are back on. Wednesday nights, man, being here on a Wednesday night, it was good for my soul. I felt so good walking away from Wednesday night. If you don't come to Wednesday night, man, you're not driving with accurate GPS instructions. You should get here. It's so good. It's so helpful. Worship reminds us it's not just the hard things that are true. They are true, but they're not the only true things. And then finally, the third thing, worship reshapes us as people of vulnerability and joy and humility. I took my son to watch Jurassic Park Rebirth. I'm a big fan of the Jurassic Park movies. Some of you are like, are you supposed to talk about Jurassic Park at church? I don't know. They didn't mention it in Bible college. So we go to this movie with my son my neighbor boy is the one who lost his marbles when there was a fire, and my nephew. And I loved the original Jurassic Park when it came out when I was a teenager. It was so immersive. I loved the experience of watching it. It was fun. It was one of my favorite movie-going experiences. This is also the first movie I've ever been to with my 13-year-old nephew. And I was just curious, how was he going to interact with this? How was this going to go for him? And you know that they have movies now. You have 3D, right? You've been to 3D movies. Not really a fan. Have you been to 4D movies? Where the chairs move and stuff like that. You know, not really. But there's 5D movies where they inject the air with smell. And anyway, I have never. The goal is to immerse yourself in the movie-going experience. I've never seen somebody as immersed in a movie as my 13-year-old nephew. At certain points in the movie, I stopped watching the movie and just watched him. It was an incredible experience. For example, there's a scene in the movie where there's a damsel in distress and she's hanging by her fingertips off the edge of a boat. My nephew lunged to the screen to try to catch her. I was like, good for you, man. There were times where there would be a dinosaur roaming the hallways and he would just be curled up in his seat trying to get away from it. And I'm like, this kid has suspended disbelief as much as it can be suspended. He is in the movie. He does not need 3D glasses. He does not need 4D seats. He is in the moment. At one point, this is true, at one point, because I'm watching him. Every time something happens, I'm like, well, how is Anthony going to respond? At one point, during a scene that I thought would have been interesting and engaging, he has his head down on his knees, and I'm like, I thought maybe it was too much popcorn, too much candy. I'm like, Anthony, are you okay? Everything all right? He's like, I just needed a break. It was such a fun experience. Anthony is in the moment. Worship is an embodied experience. Worship is not just that we think good thoughts about God. Worship is not just that we say true things about God. It's an embodied experience. The Bible speaks of this over and over and over. It talks about kneeling, and it talks about bowing and standing and shouting and lifting hands and lying face down and dancing and leaping and clapping, playing music and trembling. It's an embodied experience that you actually do, and it expresses and results in humility and awe and joy and surrender and celebration and vulnerability and intention. It's your body acting out the things that your mind is saying to God. We literally, now Churches of Christ, we're pretty awesome at really getting into worship, aren't we? I saw somebody smile one time and I thought, man, the deacons probably should have a talk with them because that's a little too much joy to express during a song service. No, I think we do okay here, but we sang a song this morning, said, let us worship the Father. One of the lines that you sang is lift your hands to the Father. We're at about 29%. The song didn't say put your hands in your pockets to the Father, right? We can't even do what the song says. It's just not how we're wired, and I get that, but we're not a people who embody worship physically. And maybe it's our Scandinavian culture and somberness and Church of Christ reservation. In fact, getting people to stand is about as much as you're going to do. Have you ever been in a church service where people don't raise hands and somebody's feeling the worship and they're raising hands and somebody's like, I think they have a question. Oh, they have 2 questions. Oh man, what's going on here? It's embodied, it's expressing worship with who we are. We're not a dancing people. I know the Bible talks about dancing in worship, and David danced. And I know if people started dancing in here and they were above the age of about 6, other people would have something to say to the elders. We're not a dancing people. In fact, my mom wrote a note to my teacher to get me out of line dancing in first grade PE. We're not a dancing people. That's not what we do. We don't really embody worship the way that the Scriptures talks about it, but worship reshapes us, our minds, our hearts, our bodies, as people of vulnerability and joy and humility. Maybe the first time you saw somebody lift their hands and it wasn't a question, you were like, okay, and you thought, well, it'd be interesting. I maybe would try that sometime, but you're very self-conscious about it, right? Maybe I would try it if I were sitting in the back and all the lights were off, or I'm in a dark room by myself. But there is something, I do it, and I'll tell you why I do it. Sometimes it's just like I feel it, but there's times where I'm intentionally being vulnerable and self-conscious to remind me that this moment, this song is not about me. It's not for me. And I know even feels sometimes like you're a little toddler raising your hands to a parent. You are. You're a little child who's expressing a glory and a desire for a parent. That's an okay thing. I know it's not our personality. I know it's not who we are, but maybe it's something that you could try. Maybe it's something that you do. Embodied worship reshapes us as people of vulnerability and joy and humility. Maybe try it sometime. Why is worship the thing that we do when life is confusing and difficult? Because worship reorients us around the real center of the universe, and that's God. Because worship reminds us that the things that are sad and hard aren't the only true things. And because worship reshapes us as people of vulnerability and joy and humility. Worship isn't a thing to do if we have time. It's the thing we do all of the time. How many of you know the song Rock of Ages? Anybody familiar with that old hymn, Rock of Ages? Okay, all right. It's an old hymn. I want to tell you a story as I wrap up this morning. Hymn, I looked it up this morning, was written by Augustus Montague Toplady. Parents, if you're looking for names for your kids. He was an 18th century minister, and the legend, probably not true, but the legend, he was going from one parish to the other, walking, and he got caught in a storm. This is in Dover, England, and there was a rock, and he took refuge in the cleft of the rock, and he was reminded of that story in Exodus, and eventually ended up composing the song Rock of Ages, Let Me Hide Myself in Thee. Fast forward 200 years, Patrick is a pool boy in Oklahoma, in a small company where I have a boss and myself. That's all. Most of the time I was by myself. But every once in a while, if the job required a little bit more, my boss would go with me. I was an earnest, young Christian, wanted to convert my boss, wanted him to become a Christian. He had gone to church as a kid, but it was really more of a tradition, heritage part of his family, not something that seemed to really take for him. And so he had mostly left the faith. He didn't disbelieve in God, but it just wasn't any substantial part of his life. And I was trying to figure out, how do I make it part of his life? I always wanted to, and when we had chances, we'd have conversations about spiritual things, and just hoping that he would figure out how to reintegrate his life with spiritual things. One day, we were going to this job site, and for some reason, he always had me drive when we were going to the job site. We were back down an Oklahoma red dirt road, and I was driving along. It had just rained. The road was a little bit muddy. I was driving a stick shift. I was new at it, and things got a little squirrely on the car. We ended up being fine, but we fishtailed 2 or 3 times, and then ended up down about 20, 30 feet an embankment in the bottom of a ditch. Kind of scary. And we just sat there for a moment. We were on all 4 wheels. It was fine. Nothing had flipped, although it kind of felt like something bad could have happened. We were sat there. We happened to come to rest on this patch of gravel. And so we sat there for a minute, nobody saying anything, realizing like this could have been a lot worse. And then I managed to get the car, to get a little traction on the gravel, and we drove back up the embankment. We were totally fine. But nobody talked. I didn't say any. I wasn't like, whoopsie, my bad. He didn't say anything. And we're just driving down the road. And this guy, who really didn't have any substance to his faith, starts singing in the passenger seat, Rock of Ages. Cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. And I thought, if you can't convince someone by explaining Jesus that they should become a Christian, you can at least put them in mortal danger. I would love to know what neural pathway that song was burned into in his mind, that it was dredged up in that moment where he realized, my life is not currently going well, and here is a song that I remember from my childhood. What truths do you want buried deep in your soul, deep in your mind, so that when you do experience times of difficulty, like we all do all the time, it is those truths and those words and that music that comes up in those moments to help you orient yourself around what is real and good and true. That's what worship is. That's why it's essential.